family. You walked out of the airport doors, and there was just crowds of people with signs, and I was just pulled over, and everyone was speaking quick Spanish, and I didn't understand a word of it. But they invited me into their home, and I ended up having a really beautiful relationship with my first host family. They were very loving and instantly made me feel like I was part of the family, which I felt very lucky about having that proximity and closeness with my host family, especially since they were the family that I was locked down with. So I was supposed to spend 3 months with them and then change, but I ended up spending 5 months with my first host family and only 1 month with my second. But I don't regret it. It was quite interesting. My host mum was a nurse who worked at the local hospital, so she was pretty much on the front of some of the COVID attacks. So she was very, very busy. And my host dad worked at the port. He worked in construction. So it was interesting to see the different sides of the different kind of jobs you had close to the town I was in, which was San Antonio, which was a port town on the coast across from the main city, Santiago, which was almost a different world. When I visited Santiago, it was kind of, in comparison, it was Auckland in comparison to somewhere like Rotorua. You had the big city with all of the life and the heat and the energy, and then you go off to the town and it's a bit more quiet and sleepy and a bit more manageable, especially for an exchange. So I don't regret at all where I was placed. But yes, I had a lovely first 2 months before the lockdown was put in place. I ended up going to school and I met some lovely people. I was only in school for 2 weeks before it all shut down, but um, it was very interesting how different kids were over there, listening to different music and how school systems works. And I'm welcome to answer any questions any of you have about that. But no, I had a lovely host family. I had a lovely experience in my town. I managed the language. My language improved quite quickly because their English was non-existent. So I had to use my Spanish, and it really helped. And I ended up going to school as well as visiting places like Santiago and going over there. I met the district president and drove around with him for a while. I visited some Rotary clubs and I was handing out the St. John's flag that I carried with me. So that should be floating around a couple clubs. Um, but about in March, that is when the lockdown started and everything grinded to a halt. All of my trips that were cancelled, I had an Easter Island trip. I was going up north, going down south. That all got cancelled. And I was stuck inside, essentially. We all had to rush to get masks. I got tested with my host brother who just came back from Germany from his exchange, which ended early because of COVID. And it was an interesting time to manage because um, although the police were very strict with the lockdown in Chile, a lot of people, because there were still protests going on, a lot of people ignored the advice and went out without masks and gloves and was just walking around the streets. And because of that, the cases skyrocketed. And every morning we'd have the news on, and you could see it would be like, 2,000 new cases, 3,000 new cases just this morning, and they kept going up and up. And school got cancelled, and we thought that it would be for another month, and it ended up becoming 4. And it was very difficult to be inside, especially on an exchange where you had so many plans and you wanted to go out, and um, you had these trips you paid for and ended up being cancelled. And it was a difficult time, but it was definitely made easier by my host family, who I'm endlessly grateful for. Um, because they definitely look after me the entire time, and they kept me entertained. They gave me things to do and cooked food, and we all cooked together, and I baked some brownies which weren't amazing, but I think it's the thought that counts. And no, I was in lockdown with my family. With You would have police cars in the street, and if you'd go outside, I usually had to have my paperwork with me, my passport and my Chilean ID, which I got. And they would ask, "Where are you from? Why are you here?" And you had to give them the whole speech before they'd let you go for a walk or go down to the supermarket. They'd usually be armed, which was a bit scary, being used to New Zealand police and then having an AK-47 just slung on
Wow.
their shoulder. And you're just standing there like, oh my goodness, I hope I don't say anything wrong to this guy. So it was different, very, very different. But I think the biggest thing that I took away from the whole experience, although it ended early, I definitely took away that a perspective on the Chilean people and how they're the kind of people who give their everything into everything. You'll be walking down the street and someone will give you energy and smile and shake and be like, hi, how are you? How was your day? Oh, I know. How's your mum? How's your auntie? You'd go to the store and they'd be all talking and all be very, very friendly. The experiences on the buses are insane. Because you'd walk onto the bus and they're just hurtling at incredible speeds, shaking all over the place. You have to hold on to a bar or sit down. And people just wander on the bus with like bags of lollies or with ice creams, and they're just yelling like, it's cheap, buy it. And they go through the store and they can walk down the aisle and ask everyone if they want to buy one. And some people walk on and give speeches about whatever they want to talk about today, whether it's politics or religion or something they have in their mind. They just have to share with people. And that's just one example of what it's like there in Chile. There's so much energy in life. And even with lockdown, I felt it. I felt the passion that was in the streets, which you can see now with the protests, which are its own beast. It's quite complicated, that whole situation. As much as I tried to understand it, it's a big issue and it will continue to be a big issue. But no, it was very life changing to have that different perspective or different cultural perspective. And coming back to New Zealand and seeing us and how generally Kiwis are a bit more cool, a bit more relaxed, a bit more. I have my space, you have your space. We're still conversating, but there's less walk up to you, give you a hug. I just saw you on the street, kind of energy that they have over there. But no, lockdown was difficult, and about 4 months in, I saw the last flight that was going out um, until basically September. So it was a repatriation flight that was going from Chile to Melbourne, then Melbourne to New Zealand. And because my family was in Melbourne, we thought, oh, it's okay. I can go and stay with my family. I can do lockdown over there. It would be all okay. So I went and did the flight, and I decided it was the best option since it would be another 4 more months of lockdown in Chile. The situation wasn't improving, and as much as I loved my exchange and I loved my experience there, it seemed like the safer option to come back to New Zealand, which I don't regret. I don't regret leaving early, but it was a hard choice to make. But it was difficult coming home because the flights are so disorganized over there. It was really quite scary because I had basically a 1 a.m. flight and I was at the help desk until about 12:30, 12:40 trying to get my boarding pass because they wouldn't let me on the flight. And that was the only flight that was going until September. So I had to get on that one or I was staying. So I was just using all the Spanish I could. I was speaking Spanish with the help desk. I was swapping to English and talking to the other exchange students, Spanish with the host family that was there with me. And it was very, very stressful. It was a stressful time, but I ended up getting help from the Australian embassy who walked up and they had a little lanyard and they were saying, hey, do you need some help? And they were handling things and trying to talk and calling embassies. And it was a stressful night. But I got on the flight at about 10 minutes before the actual flight was supposed to take off. And I remember walking on the flight and there were helpers who were saying, oh, you're the guy who was at the help desk. Good job, you got on. I'm like, thank you so much. I honestly didn't think I would. And that was a 14.5 hour flight. So I had a lovely stress-free sleep after I just collapsed. But no, then I arrived in Melbourne and did my 2 weeks there. And that was just before Melbourne broke out, so I'm happy I kind of got out of there. And I arrived and I did my lockdown in Auckland, and that was okay. I stayed in the It was on Queen Street. It was a hotel on Queen Street, right by the train station, and it was very odd being back and seeing how everything had changed but was the same, and coming from Chile when the streets were practically empty and everyone was wearing masks, and looking outside on Queen Street and seeing everyone walking without masks and no social distancing, which obviously has changed now, unfortunately, but on that day was very it was different. It was a bit of a culture shock coming back to your own country and seeing how different they handled the crises and how people are managing it. Um, but no, I came home and then I was in Auckland for a week, and then I've basically been backpacking down south since. I um, made some friends on the flight, and I have a friend in Christchurch, and I road trip down to Wellington with another Chilean lady I met on the flight, which was full of South Americans. So I thought, oh, it's good. I can practice my Spanish, and I've just kind of kept going south. I've been meeting so many Chileans here. It's crazy that you never realize how many Chilean people are in South Island, even in the North Island. You go into hostels and you just look around and you see, oh, there's a Chilean there. There's an Argentinian staying here. I met so many Argentinians in Dunedin and a lot of Chileans in Queenstown. They are everywhere. Walk into any store and you'll see a Chilean working there. It's crazy. But no, I had a wonderful, wonderful exchange, and I want to thank you all again for it. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have about South America or how they're doing with COVID or the protests or anything. I'm more than happy to share with you what I know. But no, that's my short piece of my exchange. Thank you so much again, and yeah, thank you.
Are you related to Kerr?
Pardon?
Are you related to Murray Kerr?
I'm not, sadly. But is there another Kerr around?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, they're everywhere.
Am I right in thinking? Sorry.
Carry on, Kev.
Am I right in thinking you did 2 weeks in Melbourne, then got on a plane and came here and did another 2 weeks?
No, luckily I only ended up doing 3 days in Melbourne because it was a transit. So
Okay.
I was trying to get into Melbourne to stay there, which means I would have stayed there, but they didn't let me because of the travel ban. So I ended up only doing 3 days and then doing the 2 weeks in Auckland.
Oh, I thought you'd done a month back to back, and that would have been wicked.
I would have hated. That would have been too harsh. Like 2 weeks was difficult for me.
What was the best part about lockdown or quarantine?
In Chile?
No, in Auckland.
Oh, in Auckland.
Well,
the food, obviously.
Couldn't be much.
No, I think one of the biggest benefits from lockdown was that my Spanish improved incredibly because you were just stuck in a house with my host family who only spoke Spanish, and you just had to speak. I spoke all day. I was just talking to them, listening to the news, watching movies in Spanish, listening to Spanish music, and it was really, really good for my Spanish, and it really improved quite a lot. I also bonded quite a lot with my host family, which is quite lovely. I consider them as much my own family, my own biological family, as my family in Melbourne. Like, they are that close after spending that much time.
Mm-hmm. And what were the riots about? Because well, Chile's had a long history, but what were the specific ones around?
To summarize, the protests that we know today that started last year in July, about in August, they started because of a price increase about the Santiago Metro, which wasn't the main reason. It was more like the straw that broke the camel's back, because there'd been this tension built up about increased prices and the wages not going up in proportion to how much they have to spend to live and work, and people just were fed up and just began these protests in the streets, which evolved into a protest to change the constitution, which was written during the dictator Pinochet. Was written during his time. So you see a lot of banners on the street and graffiti about the Nueva Constitución, or the new constitution. And those protests pretty much carried on until halfway through my exchange. And then when lockdown hit, they changed a little bit. with different issues, especially around economic recovery. But essentially, there's been protests around different issues that have been brought up around economic recovery, about pensions is the new one. People kind of want to take their pension fund out to pay for necessities and living, but since it's privatized, the companies don't want to give them their pension back, this stored income, and that's the new protest. But no, they've been protesting for about, I would say, almost a year now. There's been back-to-back protests, and they've just been protesting in the street, and less so in my town. Like Santiago was the hub for it. When I went through Santiago, I passed through Plaza Estrella or Plaza Dignidad, which is pretty much the heart of these protests and gatherings. And you'd walk outside and your eyes would burn because of the tear
Wow.
gas that was still in the air. I was walking outside and I was like, oh my goodness, it's almost like someone was cutting onions. It was, your eyes would just itch and burn. And that was from residual tear gas.
Yeah.
And you'd see these police cars with like sheets of metal and armed police inside just driving around in case anyone tries them. I don't know. It was interesting. It really made me appreciate what we have here in New Zealand and how we're quite quiet here.
Lachlan,
Any other?
sorry,
Sorry.
were you talking?
No, go for it.
Okay. Lachlan, having been in Chile, where you've seen cases, new COVID cases going up like about 2,000 a day, what do you actually think of, or really, I'd like to know, what are your thoughts about how New Zealand has decided to go hard, go early? And,
It didn't go early.
Oh, look,
Virtually the last country in the world to close.
Yeah,
we're like the last country in the world, so.
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I'd like to, I like
25th of March.
because you've been in a country where, COVID cases have just risen, by like 2,000, you said, in a day. So what do you think of the approach that New Zealand has taken?
I feel like I'm very, very proud of New Zealand, honestly, because with our response, it went from people overseas, especially in Chile. I got a lot of questions like, is New Zealand, where is that? Is it in Europe? Like, where is that? But after the response and after we managed to go COVID free, everyone was saying, oh, New Zealand, you're so amazing. Good job. You're the one who did it, which was quite heartening. But with the response, the biggest problem that I saw in Chile was that there were rules that people were following, but everyone disregarded the rules. You were supposed to wear masks, and I did, but there'd be people, full families walking outside without masks. They were lacking social distancing in restaurants. There were still protests in the street. As much as some protesters tried to have masks on, a lot of them didn't. And because of the disregard for the rules and a massive distrust for the government and a lack of clarity in communicating these rule changes and the lockdowns, the cases just skyrocketed, and people just made it worse by continuing to go outside and continuing to party and continuing to spread it. With New Zealand, what I saw, the biggest thing that Chile didn't have is New Zealand actually listened and had a basis of trust and communication with their government. What Jacinda did very, very well, and I'm not saying she's perfect and she didn't do everything perfectly, but what she did amazingly was communication. She was very, very clear. And whenever I was seeing the news bulletins, she was very clear with, okay, we're in this level now. These are the tiered level systems, which Chile didn't have. A lot of countries don't have a tiered level system with clear rules, which I think is crucial to these lockdowns because you need to know what you need to do. America, for instance, is very unclear with what they want to do. But no, they were very, very clear, communicated very, very well. And that was one half of it. And the other half was that people actually listened and people followed those rules. And I saw all the pictures of Auckland roads just being empty, which was insane. I was seeing that. And when you look outside in Chile and people are still walking around and driving, it was a shock. So to answer your question, I feel like communication and everyone working together is something that New Zealand did very, very well, and Chile did very, very badly, and that results in our two situations.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Just a comment, John, have a word with Beryl, and she'll tell you how to sign this guy up in Rotaract, lock him in for 5 years, and then he can join Claire in the youth wing.
Oh, I'd love to.
Get him while he's still hot.
Lachlan,
Oh.
I've really enjoyed listening to your experience, and think it was an unusual time to go, not at all what you expected, but I love the fact that you've taken all the positives out of it and you've come back having not regretted the experience. I think good on you. I just love the attitude. I'm interested with what you're doing for the rest of this year, and where you were backpacking. Are you somewhere exotic now? Where are you?
Well, I've gone all the way fully down south. My friend who I met on the plane, a Chilean lady, was driving down to Wellington for work, and she offered me a ride if I wanted to come down with her, and I said yes. So after about a week in Auckland and catching up with friends and family, I pretty much just set out again and drove down. I stayed in Taupo, and I went down to Wellington. And then I had a friend in Christchurch, so I moved down there, and I just kind of kept going. So right now I'm in Picton. I've just gone down south and I've come back up, and I'm thinking about looking for work in Wellington because I've kind of spent all my money traveling. So I felt like I need to find some work, and I have found some good backpacker jobs like fruit picking, and I found a really good fruit picking job in Opotiki by the Coromandel. Kiwi fruit picking, it's like 60 hours a week. You're just working, but some really good money. But no, for the rest of the year, after I finish backpacking, I'm probably going to work and catch up with family and try and use this time I have before I go into university next year, which is what I'm trying to do, to get back into the swing of things and enjoy my new freedom that I have from not having school, which is awesome. Not that school's bad. Like, I love school, but there's nothing compared to having the freedom of moving around and being free.
What year are you if you had stayed in New Zealand? Would you have been year 13?
Yeah, I would have been year 13.
Yeah. But you've got university entrance from last year.
Yes, I'm going through discretionary entrance, which is where they use the marks I did in year 12, level 2, instead of level 3. So I just had to wait for those to open up, and I might have to ask Robin to have a nice reference to be like, Lachlan, he's a very good student. He was a good Rotary student. Please let him in.
Unusual times, fantastic. It's enjoy the freedom while it lasts, because once you lock into that uni, it's gone again.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, Lachlan, I'd love to add to what Penny said. You've had to me, it's almost a disastrous exchange, because it's not what the Rotary Youth Exchange is all about, is to send people away to go into lockdown and then to come back into quarantine here and then and not be able to see your parents on the way back. Totally unique experience. So the fact that you're being so positive about it is fantastic. Yeah. So go you. I'm glad you've had some fun now that you've got back and you've been able to travel and just have some freedom and get some excitement back into you. Different sort of excitement back into
Bit of enjoying not wearing a mask and being free.
Yeah, when you could have been, if it had been a normal year, whatever that means anymore, where you could have been in Chile,
True.
Living the dream. You're sort of living a different type of dream here.
Oh, wow. It's different, but it's not necessarily worse. Because, I mean, yes, my exchange was cut short, but I've had the most incredible trip here in New Zealand, and I've met some really amazing people. And my fact of even going to Chile has allowed me to make so many friends, because I usually wear a hat with a little Chilean flag that I picked up while I was over there. And so many people have approached me like, oh, I see your flag. I'm Chilean. Like, why do you have the flag? And then when you speak Spanish, they're so surprised because Kiwis usually aren't Spanish speakers. So that's another opening that allows me to meet people. So it's,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's a very different exchange. I wasn't exactly what I thought I was signing up to, but I don't regret it at all. And I'm very happy that I went.
Cool. And I'm astonished to hear how many Chileans are in the that we keep
Oh
letting
my.
come into the country. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you've got any questions, just jump in, anyone. A lot of us are muted, so you'd have to unmute.
Yeah, I'm more than happy. I've got a lot of stuff I've been learning about being in lockdown and hearing about politics over there, which was very interesting. Very different.
One last question from me. You, Lachlan, you mentioned about the education system in Chile. How is it different to New Zealand?
I think one of the biggest differences is how classes are structured, which is that the first thing you notice is that the students don't move from class to class. The teachers move. So everyone sits in the same room basically all day, and the teachers leave and come back and teach the different subjects. You have a list of about 6 or 7 different subjects you have philosophy, you have maths and sciences and English classes. And generally, the classes are structured for you have about an hour per each class, sometimes 2 hours for a double class. And then you have a small break in between every class. So you have an hour class of philosophy, and then you have a small break where everyone just gets up, they play music, everyone's just walking around, people are eating food, and then everyone sits back down again. You have another class, another small break, and then it repeats. Everyone's playing reggaeton, which is the kids' music. It's electronic-y, kind of reggae. Very, very different. But yes, it's the structure of the classes. A lot of the subjects they teach, like for instance, history is very specific to Chile. We learn a lot about Pinochet, the dictator, and a lot of Chilean history, as well as learning about the situation today, which was quite special. It was quite interesting to hear that. How lunch is generally handled is also quite different. There are free lunches over there, but you kind of have to race to get them. They have a little cafeteria where they make these sandwiches, and they put like just sandwich, and they change what they have in them. You have bread and maybe tomato, or bread and avocado, or whatever they have today. But you have to get there really quickly because a massive line comes out because everyone wants to get the food. And sometimes they run out. So you have to end up paying for your food if you don't get there quick enough. So it's a bit more hectic, a bit more energetic. The structure is a lot different. And I would say that the experience as a student is very, very different from New Zealand in terms of how much time you get with your fellow students talking and interacting and in classes, because you don't leave the room. So pretty much all day you're sitting next to people and talking and trying to pay attention in class, but it was a lot more talking than I thought I would be doing. But no, I think that those are the main differences between New Zealand and Chile.
Did classes carry on during lockdown?
No, they did not. That's why I only got about 2.5 weeks of school, because once lockdown happened, they shut down school. And they did online classes, but they were a lot different, especially with the atmosphere of classes.
Okay.
What was the economic problems suffered in Chile?
On an individual level, there was a massive growing wealth disparity between the rich and the poor, which really instigated a lot of tension that was coming between the two classes. The middle class was being alienated quite a lot. I know my family was a middle class family, and there was a lot of struggle of them to put food on the table when you had people like the president, Piñera, who was the wealthiest man in Chile, kind of the figurehead of this problem. So a lot of people had his picture everywhere with devil horns and saying that he's the problem, and you hear it everywhere because he was the face of this growing disparity. There's also an economic slowdown, but that's natural. It's what kind of happens. They aren't growing as fast as they expected they would, and had a lot of promises. The politicians made a lot of promises they couldn't live up to about the living situations and how there'd be a better quality of living in the next 5-10 years, and all of these promises that they tried to achieve by putting the economy first,
Yeah.
as they did, because Chile is they're very similar to the United States historically, because Pinochet was buddy with the presidents. He was best friends.
Yeah.
So a lot of the economic system is very hyper-capitalist.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of importance being put on privatization and putting the economy first, which was worked well until it didn't. And that's why you have a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else got some questions? Okay, we're about 20 past 8. So did we have somebody for closing today, Robs, or?
No. But Ruth, did you want to ask something? I just noticed that you...
Yeah, I noticed there's a lot of dairy farms in Chile. I think we've sent quite a few farmers over for the last few years. I think it's been on Country Calendar a few times. So did you notice anything the same? So,
oh, no, like, especially the south of Chile has a climate that's almost identical to the south, like our South Island. It's because it's such a long country. They've got very, very hot up north, very, very cold down south, to the point where if you go to some area like Patagonia, it looks like you've gone to somewhere like Milford Sound, or you've gone downtown now in Queenstown. They have mountains and rivers and trees. And because of that, they have really good climate for dairy farms. They have a lot of, although it's very hilly, they have some plain lands. They usually have dairy farms. They're known for their pig farming. They're very, very famous for their pig farming. And they're also very famous for their wine, because the climate down south is perfect for wine. So you get a lot of, one of the best things about being over there, and I know I'm following the 4Ds and I wasn't supposed to be drinking, but I did have a couple sips. Sorry, Robin, I'm so sorry. But I couldn't resist, because you could get really, really good wine, really good quality wine for really quite cheap, because there's so much of it being made. So you'd go to the store and you'd pay equivalent of, I would say, about $20, $25 NZ, and you'd get a really, really good quality bottle of wine that you share with your family. So usually those are the main exports, and there are a lot of dairy farms, especially in Argentina and Chile, because they're known for their carne, which is the cow meat or beef. Especially since they eat so much beef over there. They are just meat eaters.
Did you put on any weight?
I actually put on a little bit, but it's not noticeable. Like, I ended up, because I did eat a lot. I was in lockdown. It was I was taking pictures of what was going on before, and it was pictures of beaches and trees and adventures. But once lockdown hit, it was just, this is the cake I ate, this is the pizza I ate, this is the meat I was eating today. So it's only something like 2 kgs or 3 kgs more, but no, if I was stayed there longer, I would have been a very different looking guy.
Fairly common problem with exchange students, either growing upwards and outwards.
Yeah, I had some loose fitting pants. I was prepared.
Good job. Okay, thank you, everybody. We've lost a little bit of our audience as people have had to ditch out to go to work. Thank you very much for that report, Lachlan. It's just lovely to see you so positive and fit and healthy and back safely. What we would like to do is have you come back physically when you get back to Auckland and when we're allowed to meet. So whether that's closer to Christmas time or, you know, I don't know when it will be, but you can pop in any time if you're around on a Thursday morning anyway to come in. We'll give you a free breakfast.
Oh, thank you so much.
On me, on our club or something. But you know, yeah, we love to see your energy and love to keep you connected. Especially for those of us, you know, there's quite a lot of us who haven't joined in on Zoom who would be interested to see you again. Yeah. So thank you so much, and keep enjoying your travels and keep in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak.
Nice to have you back, Lachlan.
Oh, it's nice to be back. Thank you so much.
And that's it, everybody. So,
Robin, Robin, do you mind if I just say a big thank you to Peter for the beautiful article that he wrote for the Bulletin about Sir Bob Elliott. So we've had a very sad couple of weeks, and for those of you that don't know, Sir Bob founded Cure Kids nearly 50 years ago with a grant from Rotary. So as part of the Golden Jubilee, the Diamond Jubilee celebration, and just most amazing man. And I feel very fortunate to have been CEO for the past 5 years under Bob's guidance, and what an enormous inspiration he has been to me and many paediatric researchers up and down the country and internationally. So just a huge thank you to Peter for that beautiful article. And I'll let everybody know that because we're in lockdown, Bob's request was to have a private service under level 2 and under level 3, but then he wanted a big celebration of his life as soon as we get to level 1. So I'll let you know when that happens. So, but he died very peacefully with Betsy by his side, and he's left me with an enormous bucket list. So thank you, Robin.
Thanks, Francis. All right, so just either chat amongst yourself or go to work, people. What are you doing? Or go and have breakfast.
Yep. I'm going to go get a coffee. I don't know about you guys.
Good on you,
All right, guys.
I think you deserved it.
See ya.
You've
Bye.
done well without caffeine so far, Lachlan. See you guys later.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.